The History of HR Management. Presented by Elaine Matthews. The history of human resources, HR, can be traced back to ancient civilizations, but the modern concept of HR as a distinct field of management and organizational function emerged in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Here's a brief overview of the history of human resources. Early origins. The origins of HR can be found in ancient civilizations, where leaders and rulers employed advisors or counselors to manage the affairs of their workforce. These early HR-like roles focused on overseeing labor, resolving conflicts, and ensuring productivity in most of the times in a non-friendly way. Industrial Revolution. The advent of the Industrial Revolution in the 18th century brought significant changes to the workplace. The rise of factories and mass production led to the need for a systematic approach to managing the workforce. However, in the early stages, worker conditions were often poor, and the primary focus was on maximizing output rather than employee well-being. One of the main features of the Industrial Revolution was the horrendous working conditions that people faced. At the time, industrial cities and towns grew dramatically due to the migration of farmers and their families who were looking for work in the newly developed factories and mines. The working conditions that working-class people faced were known to include long hours of work, 12, 16-hour shifts, low wages that barely covered the cost of living, dangerous and dirty conditions, and workplaces with little or no worker rights. Scientific management. The main objective of this theory that analyzed and synthesized workflows was improving economic efficiency, especially labor productivity. It was one of the earliest attempts to apply science to the engineering of processes to management. Scientific management is sometimes known as Taylorism after its pioneer, Frederick Winslow Taylor, who developed it in the United States during the 1880s and 1890s within manufacturing industries, especially in the steel ones. Its peak of influence came in the 1910s. Although Taylor died in 1915, by the 1920s scientific management was still influential. It laid the groundwork for the future development of HR by recognizing the importance of systematic management practices. Personnel management. In the early 1900s, as labor laws and regulations began to emerge, organizations started establishing personnel departments to handle employment-related matters. These personnel departments were primarily concerned with hiring, firing, payroll, and compliance with labor laws. The focus was on administrative tasks and ensuring legal compliance. The PD, Personnel Department, gained a more professional role in the aftermath of World War I and the Great Depression of the early 1930s. The demands of wartime production had led to enactment of several provisions to ensure that issues related to wages or working conditions did not hinder production. Human relations movement. In the 1920s and 1930s, the human relations movement emerged as a response to the perceived negative effects of scientific management on worker morale and productivity. Researchers like Elton Mayo conducted studies at the Hawthorne Works, a Chicago complex that housed more than 40,000 workers who assembled and inspected countless telephones, cables, and other communications equipment. The studies emphasized the importance of social and psychological factors in the workplace. This movement highlighted the need for considering employee well-being and motivation and not only productivity. Essentially, the Hawthorne studies concluded that when employers take an interest in workers and make decisions based on their natural needs and psychological makeup, productivity increases. They also found that people work best when organized into groups, when they can have effective two-way communication with their leaders, and when leaders communicate and share information freely as part of an overall cohesive decision-making process. The human relations movement is seen as the precursor of the modern human resources function. Before the human relations movement, workers were typically seen as replaceable cogs in organizational systems that put the ultimate value on higher output. Human resource management, HRM. The term, human resource management, gained popularity in the 1960s as organizations recognized the strategic importance of managing human capital. HRM encompassed a broader approach to managing employees, emphasizing recruitment, selection, training, development, performance management, and employee relations. The role of HR expanded to include strategic planning and aligning HR practices with organizational goals. Modern HR practices. In recent decades, HR has evolved further to address changing workplace dynamics and challenges. This includes the adoption of technology for HR processes, example, HR information systems, the growing emphasis on talent management and employee engagement, the focus on diversity and inclusion, and the increasing recognition of HR as a strategic partner in driving organizational success. Today, HR divisions play a crucial role in attracting, recruiting, selecting, training, developing, and retaining talent, fostering a positive work environment, ensuring compliance with employment laws, and supporting the overall organizational strategy. The field continues to evolve in response to advancements in technology, globalization, and shifting workforce demographics.